Hello, American Patriots, and welcome to another episode of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places you could be tonight, but you chose to be here, and for that, I am forever grateful. For those of you that follow me, you know that I've been away for 2 weeks. My father, he's 83 years old. He fell and broke his back. He's been in the hospital. We now have him out of the hospital. He's in rehab. He's recovering. So we've got a long road ahead of us. So for all of you that sent your thoughts and prayers, the Ducote family thanks you very, very much. I've taken the time to read to my father some of the comments, and he's very grateful and says thank you as well. This week, we're going to talk about the border with Mexico. Many of you know that I've went down there numerous times. We did several documentaries, and it was a mess then, and it's becoming an even bigger mess now because we're undoing everything that Trump put into place, and in some cases, keeping what Trump put into place and just calling it something else so that it doesn't get called kids in cages by the new administration, although it never was with the previous administration, but that's how it works. One of the biggest concerns that we all have as American patriots is that if we talk about what's happening on the border, we get labeled as racist. We get told it's hate speech. Just tonight, before the show started, in a production that I had for the show, there was somebody jumping in there saying that we're doing racist and bigot type things by talking about the border. I, for one, have always been for legal immigration. I welcome everyone to the United States of America. Look, here's the facts. Everyone right now that's born in America isn't from America. Your family, if you trace it back, came from someplace else. We are all immigrants. And that's what we welcome here. No matter what happens under any administration, the most important thing to keep in mind is there is no other country on planet Earth that has more people trying to get into it legally and illegally than the United States of America. And for those of you that have served in the military overseas, you know very good what I'm about to say, and that is there is no other place, there is no other country that is as free as America. Again, no matter the administration. With that, I'm going to bring on a special guest. I'll give you a little brief introduction about this gentleman. His resume is amazing. His name is Victor, and I hope I'm going to pronounce this properly, Avila. He is a retired supervisor special agent with the U.S. Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, which is ICE, Homeland Security Investigator, HSI, under the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS. When he conducted international complex criminal investigations in a wide range of violations such as human trafficking, smuggling, drug trafficking, financial violations, arms trafficking, commercial fraud, and counterterrorism. While on official assignment in Mexico, he suffered multiple gunshot wounds and survived a violent ambush by a Mexican drug cartel. Sadly and tragically, his partner lost his life in that gun battle. He began his very successful law enforcement career as a United States probation officer for the U.S. courts and as a district parole officer for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree in criminal justice from the University of Texas at El Paso. Today, he serves to honor the memory and the dedicated service of his partner and all those that have died fighting in law enforcement. He is an advocate for border security, immigration reform, human trafficking awareness, and the protections of our sovereignty. He has been featured on Fox News, I-24 News, Univision, Owen, Telemundo, and various syndicated radio and podcast interviews. He is also the author of the book Agent Under Fire, which is available at libertyhillpublishing.com, amazon.com, and barnesandnoble.com. With that, please welcome to the show, and let's make sure I can do this properly. And there he is. Thank you, sir, for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
I'm thinking very good. Thank you so much for having me, Douglas. I appreciate it.
Yes, indeed. You know, I went down there to the border. I'm a veteran law enforcement officer myself, served out in California. Back then, we had a lot of issues with gang members. We had nothing like what we're experiencing and seeing today. And first, let me say to you, thank you for your service to the United States of America. And from one brother in blue to another, I appreciate everything you have done and everything you've went through and what you have sacrificed for our country. I know it's been a rough battle from everything I've read in your bio and what you've had to personally experience. So our heart goes out to the family of all those that have died fighting on our border and all across law enforcement.
Thank you.
If you would, tell us just a little bit about what got you interested in moving into this career field of being in law enforcement with ICE.
I started my career, grew up in El Paso, Texas, in a border town, and was interested in law enforcement as a young age. I was El Paso Police Explorer, where I got to interact with police officers on ride-alongs and crowd control and taking care of helping them with the parades and a lot of things. And I really got to see the human side of law enforcement and realize I grew up respecting law enforcement. That's how my parents raised me, and even had that fear of that good fear of law enforcement, that you respected them. And I also learned that, these are normal people with normal lives that have the same challenges that we do. And that really intrigued me early on in my career as a teenager. Moving forward, I went into the criminal justice field in my degree. And in El Paso, there's a large presence of federal law enforcement agencies. And so that's always what you strive to go for in the law enforcement career. And in my case, I started off at the state. They went up to federal and the courts, and then realized that I didn't want to do and read what the agents were telling me and the reports that I was writing for the U.S. courts. So I wanted to go and be that criminal investigator. In that case was U.S. Customs Service, right before the merger of DHS and the creation of DHS that merged the Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS, remember them, and the investigators of the U.S. Customs Service, who we now know as ICE. And there's several divisions of ICE. So one you hear a lot about in the news, the deportation officers that hold the camps and all that. I worked on the other side, which was the criminal investigators, now known as HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, that conduct complex investigations regarding the human trafficking, the human smuggling, the commercial fraud, intellectual property rights, which we've seen a lot right now with, for example, counterfeit vaccines, counterfeit masks that are being brought into our country. So HSI does a broad range of investigations, that anything that touches our border or has a nexus to our border, we have that jurisdiction to investigate. And I was fortunate to be back in El Paso and start my career there after the academy.
Very, very cool. One of the things, Victor, that a lot of people are upset with is members of Congress that have been calling for the defunding of ICE, and not just ICE, but also Border Patrol, city police, state police, federal agencies. What is the general feel right now with uh, members in law enforcement, friends of yours or people you serve with, when it comes to hearing this type of rhetoric, knowing what you've been battling against on that border? Um, how do they take that?
It is demoralizing, to say the least. And when it comes to the ICE, the case of ICE, they want to completely abolish the whole agency. Like for some reason, because of the political aspect that ICE brings to it, for some reason they don't. I don't see them wanting to abolish DEA or abolish FBI, but they want to abolish ICE because we enforce immigration law and customs law that deals with our borders. And all the agents do is want to secure our homeland and protect our homeland and for the
Right.
safety and security of our U.S. citizens, which is, to me, one of the most important aspects an agent can do. But
Yeah.
you're right, this defunding and abolishment of the police has really hurt our officers in blue throughout all levels, local, state, and federal, which has only made the police job that much harder. It's a hard job to begin with. Now they have to deal with the political aspects of it. Now in the last couple of years, I've seen this shift where all of a sudden our elected officials, our mayors, our county commissioners, our city council men and women are telling our chiefs of police and sheriffs what laws to enforce and what not to enforce. And I don't know who made them the law enforcement experts all of a sudden, but you see these
Right.
autonomous zones come up. You look at what's happening in Portland. There's no control at the local level. And so ICE right now is in the last 4 years they felt very emboldened and very backed up by the previous administration, rightly so, because they were doing a great job in securing that border. The wall was going up, a lot of good things were happening. That was only helping us and benefiting us in the U.S. And but now we see completely the opposite, and not just the opposite. They are completely dismantling even the authority. I think they are slowly abolishing ICE in so many ways by defunding them, not giving them all the funds, and second of all, not tying their hands and not allowing them to conduct these investigations. You heard just about a few weeks ago that the Biden administration did not allow for ICE to continue Operation Talon. Operation Talon was an operation that went out to seek convicted felons, illegal aliens in our country of sex crimes, convicted of sex crimes, child trafficking, child pornography, child rape. These individuals are, I think anyone can agree, no matter who the president is, that these are the
Right.
individuals worst of the worst, and these would be the first ones on the list that you would want to deport, but not under the
Right.
Biden administration. They are now untouchable. And this is the wrong direction that we're going to, because again, I'll repeat, it does not benefit our communities, our neighbors. These individuals are running around rampant.
Yeah. One of the things that we saw when we went down there, uh, I think the first border documentary we did, we were going across the Rio Grande down around Brownsville, and we came across uh, something that we saw up in the bushes, kind of hanging. We weren't exactly sure what it was at first. We captured all this on film, and it turned out to be basically a headscarf that was in Arabic writing. And we went and we talked to some border agents that were near where we were. They all knew we were down there and where we were at to keep an eye on us so we would be safe. And we turned it over to them, and they explained to us that they had just busted several people from Muslim countries, Iran, uh, uh, different places in the Middle East that had been coming across the border. How big of an issue do you think that is with mixed in with those from Central and South America or from Mexico?
I'm glad you brought that up because it's a huge, huge issue. And I'll tell you from personal experience, I interviewed these individuals. By the way, we refer to them as SIAs, special interest aliens, that have been identified that come from special interest countries. Bangladesh, Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Pakistan. I interviewed these individuals when I was assigned in Mexico. I, through interpreters, tried to get some intelligence as to what their intentions were. We really had no identifiers on them. We didn't know their true name, their true date of birth. We had started instilling back then. I was one of the first ones to take these new machines that scanned the iris when they came down the river from Guatemala, to at least identify them, so we knew that it was the same person that came down from the southern border of Mexico that was going to be seeking asylum in California just 3 days after that. These individuals, some were caught by Mexican immigration, put in these camps, and I got the opportunity to get in there to talk to them. They hardly said a word. Once in a while, one would say, I'm going to New York, and that's it. These individuals have set camps, have set communities all around Mexico. Yes, they are in Mexico, and they know that being in Mexico is as good as being in the U.S. So what's happening right now with these huge caravans, you're absolutely right. They're seeing the vulnerabilities and sneaking themselves in there. Grab a child and you come in as a family unit, no questions asked. And absolutely, that's the point where border security becomes national security. And you heard 11 Iranians were caught on the U.S. side just about a week and a half ago.
Yes.
This continues
Yes.
to happen. These, by the way, not all of them are turning themselves in. These individuals are still being smuggled in to avoid detection. That we have a lot of smuggling ventures still in between the ports of entry, not where all these individuals are turning themselves in to seek asylum. They're
Right.
still wanting to circumvent that because we don't know what their intentions are to come into the U.S.
Exactly. What do you think what is the most movement that you've seen or that ICE dealt with, let's say each year? Is it drugs, guns, weapons, or sex trafficking of women, children, boys and girls? What is the larger percentage of what you're faced with?
Still, what dominates is the drug trafficking. However, right now, it's shifting the drugs. There's always been the marijuana, the heroin, the cocaine, but right now it's methamphetamine and fentanyl. Mexico is the number one producer of methamphetamine in the world. They have
Wow.
super labs in Mexico with the help of, guess who? China, who gives them the chemicals and the precursors to make these drugs in Mexico. Second of all, they are producing a lot of counterfeit pills that a lot of kids in our community in the United States are dying of overdoses. Not the ones, these are not drug addicted kids. These are ones that are in college that want to take an Adderall. Well, that Adderall is not an Adderall. It's full of fentanyl. They take one, they die. And we have a lot of those deaths as well. Plus the overdoses, we had 80,000 plus overdoses last year in the United States, but there's no outrage when it comes to that. So this is what's going on with the drug trafficking. Yes, that still leads. But what's happened is the cartels, which, by the way, I don't like to call them drug trafficking organizations anymore because that's not what they are. They realize that the human commodity, because that's how they see humans as a commodity, the human trafficking and the smuggling are like, wait a minute, this is leaving a lot of money here, especially when you see the large amounts of caravans coming in. They're like, we're taking over, and they have taken over. It used to be with the coyotes, and they were separate. The human smugglers were kind of separate from the cartels. Not anymore. The cartels control all of it right now. If you're one of these migrants that is coming in, you are going to pay the quota, what they call the piso, to that cartel. In this case, down in the southern Texas border, to the Gulf Cartel or the CDN, which is a faction of los Zetas. You will pay them just to get across. Whether you turn yourself in or not, whether you want to get smuggled in or not, you will pay that fee. By the way, these are two different crimes. Smuggling is one. It's a venture where you pay, you get put across, and that's the end of it. But then we all know about the trafficking and the exploitation. That's the big difference with the human trafficking, is they continue to exploit these women, kids, and children all the way into our country, everywhere. I investigated those cases. I'm a subject matter expert in human trafficking, and it's one of the most horrific crimes that you could ever know, and it is happening. Now they're taking more advantage with all these unaccompanied minors coming in, that some of these kids are being recycled. Some of these kids are being trafficked once they get into the U.S. Some right now, they're being held. We have over 4,000 children in camps right now, not cages, right? Because they don't want to call them cages anymore.
Right.
But what we have them, we don't know what to do with them because we don't know where their next of kin or their father or their mother are at. We don't know if they're in the U.S., if the parents are in their home country. It is very scary in the situation that's going on right now. And the only people benefiting from this are the cartels and the organized criminals on the Mexican side that push this all the way to our communities everywhere in the U.S. The cartels are present in our country. They run the show here. There were 5 Sinaloa cartel members just indicted last week in Chicago. Why? Because they control the product from the Chicago gangs. The Chicago gangs ultimately work for the cartels. They might have their own organizations there. The gangs in St. Louis and Maryland, these high crime areas where we continue to hear about the shootings and the murders, this tied to a lot of the violence down to the cartels. It is something that we have to address and address now.
So to say that no one gets across our southern border illegally without the cartels allowing it would be a true statement?
100% true. No one, if you want to come in here and do some kind of illicit activity through Mexico, you will not be able to do it on your own. And that's if you have,
Gotcha.
We're talking about coming through the border. It's not going to happen. You will be encountered by a cartel member and you will pay your dues. However, look at what happened just a couple of weeks ago. They were burying the bodies in Guatemala today. 13 Guatemalan nationals were killed and burned alive in a car. We don't know why. Did they not want to pay? We don't know the circumstances as to what led to that, but we know the viciousness that these cartels do. There are videos, and people can watch these online. They love posting this, cutting off heads, chopping up people, sending a message to the other cartel members, killing police officers, politicians. By the way, killing the press and the media, a lot of journalists,
Right.
and more than any other place in the world. The violence in Mexico is way beyond anywhere. Even if you would combine the violence of ISIS and the other foreign terrorist organizations that we have in the Middle East, it doesn't compare, not even close to the violence that's happening in Mexico. 36,000 murders happened last year in Mexico. 80,000 people have gone missing. If you would put those numbers in the U.S. per capita, it would be an outrage. We would have,
Right.
it would be some chaotic response from the United States because we wouldn't be able to handle that. That is just not normal. But in Mexico, they're doing nothing about it, and that's why that country is controlled by the cartels and solely by them, including the politicians.
Do you foresee a situation in the future where the Mexican government will actually do something to counter them to stop this flow, or stop the drugs, do something to partner with us to at least stop the bad element? Is there anything that you've seen maybe in the past where they're willing to work? I know when I was in the military, we did a lot of missions down in Central and South America with DEA agents and special forces folks that we were taking in to do anti-drug type stuff. And we worked really, really well with all of our host countries down there. As a citizen sitting back watching the news, I don't see that happening anymore. Is it happening behind the scenes, or are they don't care? Or is the cartel so powerful now that it's useless for the Mexican government to try and step in and put an end to it?
Several things there, so I'll start by saying this: the Mexican government right now, the Mexican administration and the president, they call him AMLO, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. He's a socialist communist guy. He has ignored and has publicly said that he will not confront the cartels. He said he'd rather give them hugs than bullets. It is a mistake because they have taken over. They, I think, now control the presidency. They control, the cartels are that powerful. You are correct when it comes to that. Second, if you notice, just in the last with President Trump, they did help us with the immigration portion of it, and I think that's because President Trump made a good deal with Mexico to say, listen, I'm going to be placing some sanctions on you and sanctions on trade because Mexico will not be able to survive with any trade if you don't stop some of that flow from Guatemala and your border. And they did.
Right.
But that's all gone out the window with the new administration. And I also seen a shift in Mexico's response to the U.S. and that relationship. It is broken right now. There, and I'll give you an example of what happened. We had a Mexican general, the ex-minister of defense, was arrested by DEA in Los Angeles last October. This
Yes.
guy was the highest level corrupt member of the Mexican government that had ever been arrested. Took him to New York. We're going to prosecute him on drug charges, money laundering charges, corruption charges. Mexico all of a sudden sends a diplomatic note saying that the United States has violated their sovereignty in arresting this Mexican national without letting them know throughout the investigative process, because this investigation apparently took more than a year. Well, this is the response. We let him go. We send him back
Right.
to Mexico on a diplomatic decision. Had nothing to do with the evidence. And I was very disappointed that the U.S. did that, because then Mexico said, no, we're going to investigate him over here. Well, guess you know, and I know what happened. 3 weeks later, they
Right.
said they found no evidence and he's a free man. On top of that, Mexico then passed a law within a couple of months, this just a couple of months ago, passed a law removing the immunity protections that our U.S. law enforcement have while they're serving in Mexico. So DEA agents, ICE agents, right now have no when I was there, you're an accredited U.S. diplomat, you have certain protections. They have
Right.
removed those protections. You have no diplomatic immunity right now, if you will, in Mexico. And they want every single communication from the U.S. law enforcement to be communicated through one channel, through one department. And that's just not the way it works. So that's not telling me that Mexico is being very cooperative with us
Right.
and wanting to challenge this. We can't do it without Mexico. I understand that, but something has to be done to join forces and come together, because the way it is right now, it's not a stable condition.
Right. Now, if you would help the audience understand a little bit about this kids in cages thing. We went down there and we saw firsthand what other members of Congress like Alihan Omar and Rashid Tlaib and AOC went down and said was happening. And then we found out that they bullface lied about not only the conditions that the children were in, but that they were ripped from their family, which is most cases not true. That they didn't come over with a family member, or they came by themselves. And then we also found out that the facilities and the locations where we were housing these children when we were trying to find out who they belonged to was actually built and put in place during the 8 years of the Obama administration. And it's my understanding that we used the same facilities, and today they're still using the same facilities, except they're okay with calling it a detention center for these children. Is there anything different that's changed, or is it the exact same setup, except now under this administration, it's okay?
It's the exact same setup. And here's what happened, to give a little bit of history. In 2014 and 2015, when that first crisis of unaccompanied minors came over, the Obama administration built these facilities, these cages. They didn't know what to do. They were overwhelmed with the kids. And initially, what the Obama administration did, and a lot of people don't know this, a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, was a whistleblower. He was an ICE agent back then who blew the whistle on what the Obama administration was doing. And what they were doing is people were saying, oh yeah, this child, his cousin lives in Chicago. Okay, send him with the cousin. Or his aunt lives in so-and-so. Well, we had turned out that we were putting the children back in the hands of the trafficker. We didn't have any, there was no vetting, there was no checking, we were just sending the kids out because they didn't want to keep them in these facilities, which is even the worst thing to do, right? To put them back in the hands of these traffickers. So my friend was a whistleblower. Dr. Jason Piccolo did a great job in doing that. So then they started holding these kids. They didn't know what to do to find the parents. We're back in the situation once again. The facilities are the same. By the way, President Trump closed some of these facilities because of the conditions that some of them were in. It's not that they were in terrible conditions. It's just that they're overcrowded. They don't have the resources. Well, guess what? They're open right now. There's one in Tornillo, Texas, right east of El Paso, Texas, that they built that was closed under the President Trump. And it's open right now, but you haven't seen Beto O'Rourke go down there. You haven't seen AOC go down there and complain about it, but they're at full capacity. They are sending today 3,000 kids to Dallas, Texas. 3,000 kids and putting them at the convention center. We're waiting for them to come here anytime. And that's what's happening, is that they don't know what to do with these children. And there's a lot of issues here. One, because of the way the laws are written, they're circumventing these laws. They're exploiting the laws. There's a Flores settlement. A lot of people have never heard of this before. It's a Flores settlement. It's a settlement that's not even a law, that had been settled a long time ago in the 2000s, that tells them you could only hold a child up to 20 days and then you have to move them. Well, people know that if a family member comes with a child as a family unit, they're going to be put in that process while they seek asylum. We know that the seeking asylum, that they don't qualify. We know that Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador are in horrific conditions of crime and poverty and no work. But that still does not qualify for the asylum laws that we have put in our books for a long time. They are not being persecuted by their government for their race, creed, religion, or political opinion. All they want, and they'll tell you, they interview, and the first thing they'll tell you is, we want to come over and work. We want to come over and better our lives. And we're humanitarian people. I'm with you. I'm a compassion person, and I'm for legal immigration. But this is not the right way to admit people into our country. We are not having the opportunity to vet them. We're not even having the opportunity to test them anymore for COVID. We were testing them. They were coming up positive, and we were still putting them on a bus and an airplane to go back to come into the U.S. Positive cases. When you and I are struggling in our own country, now the children in these camps are getting first grade education, but we can't have our own kids in our own schools around our country. It is upside down. It is backwards. And we cannot continue to be in this path, because before you know it, before the end of this year, we'll have over 1 million people coming into this country in this fashion.
Wow. Let me put you on the spot for a second. If you were the president of the United States, what would be your first priority?
Border security. The first thing I would do, I would fire the Homeland Security Secretary. Today, he says he still cannot acknowledge the fact that it's a crisis. This is a disaster. They sent FEMA yesterday. They started sending FEMA. You know that FEMA is an emergency management agency, because it's an emergency down there. It's a disaster. That's when FEMA is required. But even having them send FEMA, they will not acknowledge that it's a disaster, that it's a crisis. He told the migrants, don't come now, but maybe come later, because we're setting you up so you won't have to struggle so much when you get here. That is not the message that we want to send. I would, as president, we have to secure the border. And when you say secure the border, there's a lot of ways to do it. The wall is one portion. Of course, we have to complete the construction of the wall. There's infrastructure. In my book, talk about sending a surge down to the border. We have 20,000 Border Patrol agents. We have ICE agents. We have even the Coast Guard, the National Guard. I'm sorry. We have them. We have 5,000 at our U.S. Capitol doing nothing.
Right.
There's no threat
Right.
there. But they're surrounded by barbed wire and fences. I want them where the imminent threat is down at our border, and that's where we need the 25,000 military personnel. So I would send a surge for a minimum of 18 months to secure that. And then we're going to get people's attention. Then we're going to get Mexico's attention, Central America's attention. And by the way, the rest of the world that do come, the Middle Easterners and Chinese and Brazilians, there's a lot of people that are coming in through that border, Haitians, Cubans, that a lot of people don't hear about. And that's what I would see initially. We cannot take care of our own issues in our own country, which are far in between our homelessness, our veterans, our own issues that we have, without securing the border and then having to deal with everyone else. It's got to be done. It's got to be done now.
One of the things that that I asked when I was down there on the very first trip was, and I asked this to, there wasn't any ICE agents that on that trip that I talked to, but it was Border Patrol, local sheriff's office, city police, and Texas Rangers. And I said, if I could take back any message to America, to Congress, to the people, personal message from you about what you would like to be known, what would it be? And this was individual interviews, and they weren't all together. They probably didn't even know each other the times we talked to them. And they all had the same theme, and that was, we want to know why members of the Democrat Party that come down here don't come and put their boots on the ground with us on this border and go out and see firsthand what we're faced with. Instead, they keep their suits and ties on and they stop at a concrete facility and then go back and tell falsified information. If there was one thing that you could share right now, at least with the audience, what would be the number one thing that you believe that every American, regardless of political party, needs to be aware of as an American?
Well, you've said the word, and it has to be awareness. They have to be aware of the conditions of the border. Shows like yours that the mainstream media is not going to tell them. That's why I'm passionate about telling the story, not just about what happened to me, but because I've seen it firsthand. I'm in contact daily with my colleagues and other friends and sources that I have down at the border telling me, please tell them this. Please tell them that we need resources. Please tell them that we need help. Right now, our Border Patrol agents are working as caretakers. They're not enforcing the border. They're not enforcing the law. We're closing down checkpoints from the interior of our country to send that personnel down there. We're even starting to send special agents, criminal investigators to help, because taking them away from investigations to help. That is not the way we do border security. And so I would say to the public, be aware, and it starts at your local level. Pay attention to who your mayor is, who your city council members are, and your school board, because it is the Democrats have infiltrated at the local level that it spreads out. If you want to have an impact, you don't have to say, well, I have to nationally form a certain capacity, do this huge thing. No. Pay attention to what's going on. Go to a city council meeting, see what happens. Go to a school board meeting and really get involved locally to see who you've elected in there, because those decisions that are being made at a local level will eventually have that impact all the way down to the border. Because you'll see their sheriffs and your police officers, and talk to the chief of police, talk to your sheriff. They'll tell you the crimes that they've seen that they normally would not have seen, because of the illegal aliens that have come into this country. Look at all the angel moms and angel dads out there that have suffered and lost their loved ones at the hands of illegal aliens. Those crimes are 100% preventable. Those people shouldn't even have been here to begin with. So forget the MS-13 and the gang members that come just for that purpose to in their own communities to terrorize them and commit more crimes. This is what I want to bring to, and that's the word to use, is awareness. As long as you know and be aware and don't think that it doesn't happen, I'm here to tell you, you're doing a great job of telling people, listen, this is real. And this is going to happen to impact you at your schools, at your hospitals, everywhere that you know. It's a tremendous amount of people that are coming in, and these people are going to require the services that you and I require, and eventually they might end up taking your place. Down in El Paso, they want to start giving them vaccines, the illegal aliens, when there's people in line here that can't get their own. So
and checks too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, by the way, they're going to get the checks right now. They're going to get the illegal aliens will be getting checks in the mail. It is not the way. America first all of a sudden is racist. Putting Americans first is somehow immoral. But that's why I put that on my bio. Is I'm here to try to protect our sovereignty, because I believe we're losing it a little bit at a time.
Right. In the few minutes that we have left, tell us a little bit about your book. I would assume, but I don't know because I haven't read it yet, but I will. I'm going to order a copy of it tonight. Do you talk about the incident, the firefight that you got in with your partner?
Yes, absolutely. The book is I talk a little bit about myself, give the reader who I am, where I come from, and my family. And then I go into a little bit of my career and share a couple of police stories, and very important, share a human trafficking one. One of the biggest ones that I did is very impactful for me. I do share it because I want people to not think, oh, this is not happening. These are horrific crimes that happen. I've rescued countless women and children from these situations. And so I put some of that in there. And of course, I go into detail, very, very explicit detail about the assignment in Mexico and the shooting, to make people aware that we have personnel trying to protect our homeland all over the world, not just in Mexico. And then the second part of my book, which is the manifesto part, is talking about what you and I talked about today. I break it down: the wall, sanctuary cities, DACA, asylum, policing in America. But not just talk about it, but I offer solutions in the book as well. And it's Agent Under Fire.
Agent Under Fire. And again, it's available at libertyhillpublishing.com, amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com. Correct?
That's right. If they want to go straight to see all those options, I have them on my website, agentunderfirebook.com, agentunderfirebook.com, and you get your options to order it from there.
Excellent. Sir, thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to talk with us and sharing this information. I hope that you'll come back in the future. We will continue to spread the word and let the American people know what's happening down there. They need to hear facts from people that have been there and witnessed it and served on the border, or at least in my case, go down there and try and do some journalism on the border and come back and share it. Because sadly, what we get out of Washington, D.C. is not the truth when it comes to that southern border. And I found that out, and it was very, very disheartening to know that we were being bull-faced lied to by certain members of Congress when it comes to what's happening down there. Thank you. God bless you. And I wish you all the best. And I hope everybody goes out and buys your book. I know I will. And we wish you all the best, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All righty. Have a blessed evening. All righty, folks. There it is. Some of the same stuff that you have heard me talking about in the past. I've done videos on basically everything that we discussed here tonight. And this is the first time I've had to talk with Victor. And it's the first time that I've had able to share any stories with him. And it's amazing how everybody that works down there, regardless if you're federal law enforcement or your county or your state or you're a ranger, they all have the same story. They're all sharing what they're up against. And for whatever reason, the Democrats don't want to hear it. And the liberals of our society don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear the truth. And I don't have a fix for that other than to continue to do what I do and encourage others to do the same thing. The more we expose, the more we teach, the more we can show generations to come what we're up against, the better our chances are in the future of having a secure country. Because without borders, you don't have a country. There are borders around members of Democrats and Republicans right now up in Washington, D.C. The fence is very big. You are restricted as an American citizen from going into areas now because of a few people who back not too long ago did some bad things in the Capitol, broke in, did some damage, stole some things, and injured law enforcement officers. And in one case, one officer lost his life, although we don't know yet the exact cause of death. It is very, very disheartening to know what took place at the Capitol, which put us in a very bad situation. Because I really do believe, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I really do believe in my heart that the Vice President of the United States was going to do the right thing and contest the election. And there was enough senators to do the same thing, to force conversation about what took place on election night, a few nights leading up to it, and the weeks that followed it. But because of what took place at the Capitol, that just went out the window. It's like spitting in a fan. It didn't do anyone any good. But again, I'd like to thank our guest. I hope to meet him and shake his hand in person one day. All our brave men and women in law enforcement all across this country, whether it's on the border or it's in New York City, they are under attack, literally under attack by Democrats and liberals. And it's only going to get worse. I don't have the answers. I wish I did, but I will continue to expose the hypocrisy, and I will continue to share with you, to the best of my ability, factual information that is happening right now all across America and across the globe. Thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate it very, very much. On Thursday night, we will continue talking about the border, and we'll bring on my special guest, will be Dan Golvich. We've become very good friends. He is an angel father. He lost his son to an illegal alien who murdered him in broad daylight for no reason at all, other than he was sitting at a red light waiting for it to turn green. And he will share his story. I've had him on in the past, and he talked about it then. And we want to continue to share the stories of angel families and law enforcement officers and what they've experienced and how this affects not just those right there involved, but it's like a virus. It spreads and it affects hundreds of thousands of more people. I can't stress it enough. I, for one, am all for immigration. legal immigration. We want you to come to the United States of America. We welcome you to the United States of America, but you need to do it according to our laws, just like every other country on God's earth. Only in America do we have a system set up where we do not enforce the laws that were already on the books. We make up laws as we put people in and out of power in Washington, D.C. And that is a crying shame. You had many places you could be tonight. You chose to be here. And for that, I am forever grateful. Please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families, and our country. May God bless the United States of America. We need God more today than we have ever in the history of the United States of America. Thank you all. God bless you. Again, thank you for all the thoughts and prayers for my father. He's doing a whole lot better, but he's got a long way to go in recovery. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining. Please subscribe, ring the bell, share this video once it gets posted up as a regular video after the show ends tonight. And I'll see you Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. Good night, everyone.